Welcome to the Motherhood Alliance podcast, the podcast dedicated to empowering moms and families on their health and wellness journey. I'm Brittany Suttner.
And I'm Andrea Rinkus. Together, we're here to explore holistic approaches that go beyond conventional medicine.
Each week, we dive into topics that matter most to you. Everything from nutrition and mental health to alternative therapies and natural living.
And whether you're a new mom navigating the early stages of parenthood or a seasoned pro looking for new ways to support your family's well-being, you're in the right place.
Even better, all of our guests are local small business owners who you can actually talk to and work with. You can learn more about today's guest and connect with hundreds of other health and wellness professionals through our informative and easy-to-use directory at motherhoodalliance.com.
Before we get started, keep in mind that this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for personal healthcare advice. Please consult your healthcare provider before making any changes based on the podcast content.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Are you ready to help your family thrive? Let's get started. Hi, we are Britt and Drea from motherhoodalliance.com, and we are excited to welcome you to a 4-episode series with Tylynn Ludwig, the owner of Tylynn Nutrition Therapy. Tylynn is a registered dietitian, certified eating disorder specialist, and sports nutrition pro with a passion for helping people heal their relationship with food. Tylynn works through an intuitive eating and health at every size lens, and she's all about busting nutrition myths, challenging diet culture, and bringing empowerment and joy to food. When Tylynn is not transforming lives through nutrition, she's currently training for the Ironman Women's World Championship in Kona, which will take place this October. And for those of you who are not familiar with what that is a very long-distance triathlon with swimming, biking, and running. Tylynn is a powerhouse of a woman, and we can't wait to share her deep nutritional knowledge with you. So turn up your volume and let's welcome her to the show. Hey, welcome back. We are in episode 4 with Tylynn. We have been learning about all things nutrition. Our first 2 episodes really focused in on talking to anyone and everyone. We covered what are basic macronutrients, and then we also really dove into intuitive eating and the freedom that can bring. That episode was really, really insightful and probably a different perspective you've ever heard before. Episode 3, we did talk about eating disorders, but that can really apply to anyone because it's not just yourself and whether it applies to you. You are surrounded by people that you may want to be listening to that episode. But today we are talking about athletes. And if you think of an athlete as somebody who runs marathons or does Ironmans, don't turn this off. We're going to be talking about people who are just working out in general, how you can fuel your body for average workouts, if you want to call them that, as well as going a little bit into those who are in higher competitive arenas. So let's just start out with, in our last episode, Tylynn, we talked about eating disorders, and I loved how you started it out with there's a spectrum. Right? And it's going to apply here too with athletes. There's a spectrum. There's people who are completely sedentary or just don't work out at all when it comes to a formal mode of exercise. But then there's also going to be the opposite end of the spectrum where there's these high endurance or powerlifting type athletes. Most people are going to fall kind of in the middle. So different areas of the spectrum will require more intentionality with nutrition and maybe supplementation. So where is that line?
Yeah, it's kind of individual and unique, but I'm just going to give some basic outlines. So the American Heart Association, what are their recommendations for what the average American should be doing, right? And I think if the average American is doing this, they may not need a lot of extra support outside of just regular consistent eating, but they may still benefit from some of the principles, which I'll talk about fueling before and after exercise. It's really the athletes who are on the more intense end of the spectrum that we're going to have to think about fueling during. So American Heart Association says at least 150 minutes per week of moderate intense aerobic activity, and then at least 2 days of moderate to high intense muscle strengthening activity. Okay, so you're having 2 lifting sessions and maybe 5 days of 30 minutes of exercise. That's one example of how that's kind of spread out. If you're doing longer sessions, maybe you're doing 2 75-minute sessions to get your 150 minutes, those are times where we're going to be more intentional about exercise. So it kind of depends on the length of time that you're exercising for, which I'll get into.
Okay. Now let's start with kind of that American Health Association or Heart Association, their recommendations. Let's just call that the average Joe or average Jane when we're talking about this conversation. So someone who's doing less than that, they would not really need any extra nutritional support outside of a healthy diet. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So for this average person that's just a normal worker-outer, do you feel like having electrolytes or sports drinks is going to be something that they should have to help rehydrate after average workouts?
Not after the average workout in temperate weather, right? Unless they're working out in 80 degrees, and it does get 80 degrees, in the summertime. If you're doing a 30-minute run in 80-degree weather, yeah, then I'm thinking about electrolyte replacement afterwards. But on average, no.
What are your go-to electrolytes? There's, classic Gatorade. There's all these, ones that you can pour into some water, kind of like Element or other brands like that. What do you use personally for electrolyte replacement?
So personally, I use Precision Hydration and Element, but I also use mixes or hydration mixes that have salt included in it, depending on what I'm doing. So for example, if I'm going out cycling for several hours, I'm going to have a hydration mix that's got carbohydrates and electrolytes in it. And I might even add some extra electrolyte powder to that from Element. I might add like half a packet of Element to that to kind of make my own custom blend, just because I know I'm a salty sweater and I have higher needs than your average Joe.
And just so everyone knows, you are an Ironman triathlete. So when you're talking about your training, it probably is a little bit higher than the average person. Yes. Okay. So that is helpful because I think people are always looking for brands that are reputable, because when you go on Amazon, it can be very overwhelming and you don't want to buy the junk, but you also don't want to spend $1 million in something that's not high quality. So thanks for sharing those. For, again, the person that is working out a few days a week, 30 minutes or so, what do you recommend for muscle recovery? Because they can still be doing strength workouts where they're getting sore and they're muscle building during that time. So how do they fuel their bodies after a workout for like a normal level of exercise?
Yeah, I would say this is a really common misconception that a lot of people are over consuming protein. They're putting a scoop of whey protein that's got like 30 grams of protein into water, mixing it up and thinking that that's their go-to recovery. In actuality, you need more carbohydrates to replace the muscle glycogen from lifting weights. So when you're lifting weights, you're using energy, okay? That energy comes from glucose or glycogen, which is the stored form of carbohydrates. So you're utilizing that. Yes, you're breaking down some of your muscle, so you do need some protein, but you actually need more carbohydrates than you need protein. So there is a specific ratio that scientists have studied. If you want to get real specific, it's like a 3-to-1 carbohydrate to protein ratio. So what does that mean? Let's say you have a snack afterwards. It would be about 45 grams of carbs to 15 grams of protein, okay? That might be a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
What about pre-workout support for this arena? And the reason I ask that is like I'm a 5:30 a.m.er worker-outer and I'm not ready to eat breakfast beforehand. Is that detrimental to my body to not eat before I work out as long as I'm fueling afterward? Or what are your thoughts on pre-workouts?
Yeah, I would say I generally recommend that you don't exercise in a fasted state if it's going to be anything longer than like 30 minutes. You're already waking up with 0 in the tank because you slept throughout the night. You're actually going through all of your liver glycogen, which is your stored form of carbohydrates when you're sleeping, just by doing natural repairs to your body. We don't think about that, but we're actually tossing and turning or blinking our eyes. We're doing stuff in our sleep that we're not thinking about, and your body's repairing at nighttime. If you've heard the term rest and digest, that's what you're doing. You're digesting everything. The clock's setting over in the morning. So you want to get something small in if you can, even if you're somebody who's working out in the morning. And I would say something small like a piece of fruit. So that could be an apple, a banana, applesauce. Those squeezable applesauce packets are really good. Fruit snacks could be a handful of pretzels or graham crackers. I gave 5 ideas there, but just something small. And it's all a simple carbohydrate, easy to digest. There's not fiber a lot of fiber in it and there's not fat in it. You want to avoid fiber because that can cause some GI issues during your exercise. If you're taking something in that's like, half a cup of beans before, yeah, it's got carbohydrates in it, but it's got a lot of fiber. You don't want that. And then again, fat slows down digestion, so it can also cause some GI issues when you're exercising.
Okay. Now let's shift gears into more of the competitive athlete. So somebody who is doing longer workouts or needs those extra fuel. So how does their nutrition change from the average Joe?
Yeah, their needs at baseline are going to change dramatically just to maintain lean muscle mass and the level of activity. So I actually had a VO2 max test done where you kind of run on the treadmill. They've got like a face mask over you, right? And then they take all of this different data and they calculated my basal metabolic rate. And this was about, I'd say 6 weeks after Ironman Wisconsin this past year. They calculated my basal metabolic rate. That means if I were to lay in bed all day, 2,600 calories.
What?
At rest. Just to maintain my lean muscle mass and my body composition. That's not including if I were to wake up and just walk over to the gas station, right? Or just to do my activities of daily living. And then that's not including how much energy it takes to digest my food. It actually takes 10% of your overall intake to digest food. Okay. A lot of people forget that. When we get to athletes, that's important because if you're underdoing your energy intake by 10%, you're underdoing it. You're putting yourself at risk for a sports injury, but also not performing at your best. And we're really concerned about performing at our best at that
for sure.
high level. So we want to be eating enough. Okay. So that's why we got to take in, or eating 6 times a day plus stuff during the workout.
Mm-hmm. And are you focused on replenishing carbs? So is that does the carb load increasing, or are you just overall increasing your balanced plate? You're just eating more or more often?
That's a good question. It really depends on the sport. So I mentioned Ironman and triathlon. Endurance athletes are going to need much more carbohydrates than the average person at baseline. So I said the average person needs about 45 to 65% of their diet coming from carbohydrates. Endurance athletes are on the higher end of that, closer to 65%. They've done studies on marathon runners. They can even be closer to 80% of their diet coming from carbohydrates, which doesn't leave a lot of room for anything else. But you can see how much carbohydrates are our number one source of energy, right?
Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming this would fluctuate during your training schedule. So during your peak training and you're hitting your highest mileage, this would be looking different than when you're at the beginning of a training plan, like if you're training for a marathon, or right after the marathon, you're going to maybe slow down and take some rest. That's when you need to be also altering these different states based off the amount of exercise you're doing.
I'll just talk a little bit about the length of exercise and the fueling during it, because I think that's helpful, because if you're just starting out training, your workouts are going to be a lot shorter, right? And you don't need as much. And then as you start to taper up, your workouts are going to get longer. So anything less than 45 minutes, I say just focus on hydration, getting water in, okay? 45 to 75 minutes, that's in the range of you can do without, but really you should be sipping on some sort of sports beverage that's got some electrolytes and some carbohydrates in it. That could be a Gatorade. That could be some other form of hydration mix, like a Scratch hydration has carbohydrates and electrolytes in it. Maybe you do a scoop of that. And I say a scoop because a lot of these hydration mixes, you can kind of taper up the density of it by mixing in more scoops. So when we get to the hour to 2.5 hour range, that's where we're kind of like 30 to 60 grams of carbs per hour. And you can kind of see on the back of each of these products what a scoop is. So I mentioned I use a hydration mix when I'm cycling. I like Tailwind. That's the brand that I go with. I'd love it if they sponsored me, but fortunately I have no affiliation with the brand, but I like them because one scoop is 25 grams of carbs. So I know, let's say I'm going out for a 3-hour bike ride. I'm putting 3 scoops of Tailwind in each of my bottles. I got 3 bottles. I'm actually above that 30 to 60 grams of carbs per hour because I went over the 2.5 hour mark. Okay, so I said 1 to 2.5 hours is 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per hour. Getting into anything longer than that, you want to do 75 plus. There are elite athletes who are doing 100 plus grams of carbs per hour. I know a particular triathlete. I mean, he wins, competitions and Ironmans, that he's doing like 180 grams of carbs per hour.
Wow. And it just, that's like mind boggling, especially for people who aren't in that arena, but that's what needs to be done.
Yes. And it is practice to train your gut up to tolerate that amount of carbohydrates per hour. So some people, if they're not used to taking in anything, they might be really sensitive, but maybe they start with 1 scoop and then they go to 2 scoops and 3 scoops. The density of these formulas does max out at a certain point, because if it gets too dense, it actually starts to become hyperosmotic, meaning that it pulls water into your digestive tract and can cause GI issues. So I don't do anything more than 3 scoops per bottle. And if I need more than that, let's say I'm in a race, I'll kind of add a gel. I'll mix in some gels. I'll mix in some goos to get those extra carbohydrates in.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit into the world of all the supplements, right? Or they're called ergogenic aids, if I remember correctly, things that are going to be aiding people within their activity. So this is going to be like creatine. We already kind of touched on electrolytes. What about like caffeine? Can you just go into your thoughts on and different levels of an athlete, and then what they should be using, what they shouldn't be using? If you have any brand recommendations, let's just jump into this piece of the conversation.
Sure. So just to provide the definition of what an ergogenic aid is, it's tools used by athletes to enhance energy, performance, and recovery. So that can be in the form of supplements and so many different supplements. But the first one I want to mention is creatine, because this is the one that has been the most researched and been actually proven to be the most effective and safe for 18 plus. We don't have a lot of research yet on adolescent athletes, so I generally recommend it to 18 plus. For anybody above like the average athlete, weekend warrior sort of person, but like if you're wanting to make more gains in muscle mass and endurance, I recommend at baseline creatine because it's safe and effective.
What is creatine? What is it actually made out of?
So creatine is naturally made in our body by our muscles, and we get it from actually eating meat as well. But if we add extra to the dose of about 5 grams per day, we can see more effects in increasing muscle mass, enhancing sprint efforts in particular. So I take it because I'm like, if I've got a sprint at the end of a race, I want to make sure
you got enough in the tank, right?
But it also helps, just like, I strength train a few times a week and it helps to build muscle mass. There's really minimal side effects to it. And the research that we have is, 20 plus years of research that it's safe and effective. And there's more and more research coming out that actually has potentially cognitive benefits as well. I was
going to say, I've heard of mental health or mental benefits for creatine too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I personally don't like the taste of it. So I get it in a gummy form, and I'm not married to any sort of brand on the creatine. I basically kind of go with whatever's cheapest, which might not be the best, but I find I have good results. So
how about caffeine?
Yep. Caffeine is another one that's been researched, has been proven to be safe and very effective, to the tune that it's illegal to have a certain amount of caffeine in your urine at these higher levels. So like Olympic athletes, they can't have a certain amount of caffeine because it's literally so effective in improving performance. But what I'll say about that is it's very individual and unique to each person. So I can't say every person should have X amount of caffeine. Like I mentioned with creatine, the dose is 5 grams a day, and that seems to be effective. There's a tapering up period to get to like a saturation of the 5 grams. But if you're starting and you're not like right in season, it's fine to just take 5 grams a day, and it'll gradually work itself up in your bloodstream. But the caffeine is one that's very unique to each person's physiology. I have a therapist I work with who she can't have any caffeine. She's so sensitive, like not even in matcha tea, for example. And then you've got me who can easily drink 3 cups of coffee a day and feel fine. So there are recommendations to try to taper caffeine for somebody like myself who is like habitual caffeine user, and you can have more effect on the day of your race. So if you taper like the week before and then you have caffeine at the race, then you will feel more of the physical benefits and psychological benefits of it. So you're just naturally more alert, and that's what kind of helps increase your performance. The amount differs for each person, and that's why I kind of talk with them about what's working for them now. Here are some recommendations. Tell me how you feel when you do this. Do you think you can do more? Do you think we should pull back a little bit? Should we change the timing of it?
Are there any other supplements or aids that you tend to recommend for athletes?
Yes. So omega-3 fatty acids can be really beneficial to help with the inflammation in the body. So exercise itself creates inflammation. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep.
Right. And it's going to be a lot more inflammation than your everyday person. So we can benefit from some things that just help with overall inflammation in the body. So omega-3 fatty acids, that's a good one. In the wintertime for anybody, athletes, non-athletes, vitamin D. I recommend that at baseline for people who are not out. Even if you're in the sun in the wintertime, you're not getting direct sunlight. In terms of other ergogenic aids, there's a lot of research right now around beets and beetroot powder. So the reason being is because nitric oxide is something that helps expand your blood vessels. So if you're taking beets or eating whole beets, or you're eating, they sell them in the capsule form, that can actually help a little bit, to the tune of what research is saying right now, 1 to 2.5%. So again, drink some beet juice before one of your workouts, maybe like 2 hours in advance if you're having a workout that's in the afternoon. If you're an Ironman athlete, you're already going to be up at 3 a.m., right? For a 7 a.m. competition, you drink your beetroot juice or whatever at 5 a.m. It can have benefits. But again, practice with this to make sure that your body's digesting that. I take it in the form of capsules too. It's a small little thing, but hey, 1 to 2.5%, I'm here for it.
Anything helps.
Well, to round out this episode, what encouragement would you have for someone who maybe is not an endurance athlete? They are, whether they're, doing nothing right now and starting from nothing, or they're doing kind of more the average Joe that we talked about in the beginning, but they want to start to up their endurance game. This could be nutrition related, or it could just be experience related. What would be a tip that you would give them for upping their game when it comes to fitness?
Yeah, this is a great question because that was me like 3 years ago. I mean, I'm fairly active, but not an endurance athlete that I am now. And
you were not doing this 3 years ago? Like
no.
Ironmans? Were you in triathlons at all?
I did a sprint triathlon one when I was 22. And then I did 2 years ago, I did my first, I say it's my first sprint triathlon, but technically it was my second one, Door County Sprint, which I highly, highly recommend for beginner athletes. It's one of the most beginner-friendly races, one of the most beautiful races. It's here, it's local. It's actually voted one of the best sprint triathlons in the nation.
Wow.
And we're really lucky to have it here in Door County. The atmosphere is phenomenal. People are super supportive. And to get to the root of this question, what I would recommend is getting connected with a local group. The community is amazing. We have all different types of athletes, right? Somebody who's just training for their first sprint triathlon or first 5K or whatever the, event is that you want to do, all the way up to full Ironman athletes. But the people that you're surrounded with are so inspiring, so motivating. They help hold you accountable and help inspire you. And I don't think I probably would have done a full Ironman this past year had it not been for meeting some of the people in Green Bay Multisport. Shout out to Green Bay Multisport.
Awesome.
They know who they are.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, the community aspect is a recurring theme on so many of our different podcasts, whether you're talking about the loneliness of motherhood, the loneliness that it can feel with an entrepreneurship, the loneliness it can feel when you're trying something new or doing a individual based sport, like running or triathlete. you need community around you. So I love that answer. I think that's great. I do want to remind everybody who is listening that Tylynn is offering 10% off any of her services. So whether you are interested in just learning more about nutrition in general, whether you're looking to up your game with athletics and you want to chat with her about that, or you want to circle back to the eating disorder topic, feel free to reach out to her. Tylynn, what is the best way to get in contact with you?
I would say via email at tylynnutritiontherapy@gmail.com.
Perfect. These were some really great topics, and I love that we hit multiple different avenues. You know, it applies to everybody. These topics were so great. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for what you're doing for people everywhere. You're really making a difference out there, and we appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider leaving a rating or review or sharing it directly with a friend who could benefit from the information? We know that you're a busy mom or caregiver, and our goal is to make your life easier by bringing tips and tricks directly from experts into your earbuds. By sharing this episode with someone you love, you can play a critical role in helping to make their life easier as well. We appreciate your time, and thank you for being a part of the Motherhood Alliance family.